Thanks for coming into my office.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you.
Yeah, it's very cozy.
Yeah, it is. It's the fly on the wall. And I like to think of it as we all need to have better exposure. I feel like I'm so lucky to live in Scottsdale where we're surrounded by such incredible people, entrepreneurs, professionals that are all in sorts of different industries and in different modes of business.
Yeah.
And you've obviously captivated me for a couple of reasons. A, we share a very similar interest in building community and community around wellness and really being intentional and proactive about how you build the circles. We've talked a lot on this show about how hard it is to build a system of support and a network of like-minded people that are equally invested in health and wellness and that are driven and ambitious. And so we sort of live in this enclave here in Scottsdale where a lot of us are kind of like that. But there's not a lot of conversation about how we do it, why we do it. And that's where I'd like to sort of bring some awareness.
Love that. Yeah, I'm definitely thankful for I met you. I think the enthusiasm and the drive and the love all is very transparent. So, it's like it takes one to know one. So I'm thankful for having met you. And I think we continue to grow our community. And it's a beautiful cycle because you'll meet other people who have similar, background and similar desires, and they connect you. And, if you've got a superpower that's a connector, you'll just continue to grow, and it's just beautiful to see others thrive. That's one of my favorite things, is seeing harmony in my surroundings with my friends and loved ones.
Yeah. So is that the basis to the events business that you've really created and building the community? Is that sort of the premise to that?
You could say potentially to some extent. That really all came about from me being very new to the city, didn't really know anybody, and was like, well, I'm in the healthcare world. I love being active. I like to do things that are social. How can I meet more people, build my tribe? Amazing men and women that I can call friends, and support each other, and also build a community. And so we threw an event at our complex and had many modalities from yoga, sound healing, spa, sauna, many other things. And we had people who came through that and they were like, wow, this is great. I want to do more. I want to get involved. And so from that, a group of our core friends built and developed. And ever since, we've done more and more very unique events. So the group is called Authentic Curated Experiences. And the premises of it is basically health and wellness enthusiasts coming together. You don't have to be healthy as can be. You don't have to be fit as can be. You just have to like and want those things in life. And we do curated experiences that are very unique, and they constantly change. They're different venues, and they're always involving some version of movement, mindset, and mind-body connection and education. And elevating businesses, elevating venues, and helping people who are leaders in different spaces to come together and support and educate our members.
Now, in the medical world, so I should preface this with Yousef is a doctor in integrative medicine. And so I'd like to actually take a sidebar just to talk about even what that is, and then talk about how necessary this the curated experiences are sort of in this wellness world.
Sure, thank you. So I'll do a quick version of this. So I got my MD in the conventional setup as far as the medical training, which I'm very thankful for. And doing my residency training in family medicine, I realized that I'm just don't have the full story. I feel like I was not able to help one of our patients who had back pain. I would just come back, and when you're going through training, they kind of hand you a certain amount of patients, and they're like, take care of them. They're yours. And I wasn't very fond of his regimen, that he was on pain medicine, he was getting physical therapy and muscle relaxers and anti-inflammatories, and back in this cycle, and just not getting better. And I was like, there's got to be something else we could do. And during that process, I got introduced to Dr. Weil, who's here in Arizona, in Tucson. And you will call him the father of integrative medicine. And came out here, did an externship, and learned so much about all the modalities in medicine from traditional medicine and folk medicine throughout the world, and also modern technology, and really blew my mind. So after that, I was like, I have to get the full story, or at least a lot more than the Western medicine training we do have, which is with itself very important, but also there is a lot more facets and a lot more resources available to individuals to help heal them. So got a fellowship in integrative medicine through Academy of Integrative Health and Medicine in San Diego, and it's been a humbling experience. So been able to kind of really incorporate natural treatments to complement Western medicine for our patients.
Is that folk medicine?
No,
You
so I
said
would say I just use that term because people are like, well, what do you mean by integrative? So I would probably give a definition of integrative medicine. So it's basically, a blend of all medicine that's evidence-based, that's practiced, throughout the years in the past or present in different cultures. And it's evidence-based, and there's obviously different levels of evidence. Certainly, you can, that we can always, go down the rabbit hole with that, but it taps into different areas of support for your health and lifestyle and nutrition, supplements, botanicals or herbs, and then certain therapies. So like yoga or physical therapy or Reiki or other things, and then you've got pharmaceuticals, Western medicine. You've got procedures or surgeries and referrals. So there's quite a breadth, and I always love to present that to patients and say, hey, integrative medicine is just more tools in our toolbox, so that we can help you get to your journey, get to your goal, and help you in their journey. But you get to pick, what's ideally safe, effective, and cost effective, in that order, for us to help you with.
I love it because I love how much autonomy integrative medicine seems to be giving the patient. I know for me, I didn't know much about integrative medicine until actually well after I was done going through chemo. And it wasn't until I was trying to get healthy again, and I was starting to go to the gym, and I was more mindful of what I could eat, and my eating practices shifted again, of course, after chemo as well. So it was really by happenstance and by accident that I started learning about all these different modalities as I was searching through ways to get better and feel better and be better. And obviously with another level of consciousness around what it means to be healthy post cancer, you know, post chemo, really. And learning that I was dealing with, how do I, from a much faster standpoint, like things that I was more extra focused on healing quicker, like my memory.
Mm-hmm.
And then learning all of these more natural ways that I could really boost memory was really my sort of entrance into integrative medicine, because it's when I realized that there's actually a lot of science out there around all sorts of different things that you can do to boost memory. We've all heard about omegas, but learning about mushrooms and learning about lion's mane and learning about even hot yoga and how the influx of freshly oxygenated blood can affect your memory. So there's lots of different things that we can do in our lives and in our lifestyle, food, movement, and medicine, that can kind of work to, help facilitate a healthier life, or in recovery in some circumstances.
Absolutely, I'm glad you mentioned that. And I always love the five basics that I always go back to. And in integrative medicine, or its sister, I guess we'd say, training, or practice of functional medicine, it was more biochemistry heavy, if you will. There's so many supplements, so many different modalities you can tap into. But if you don't do the basics right, which I actually had a discussion about this at our last event we just had at a longevity gym called Proof. That was, these five of sleep, hydration, nutrition, movement, and stress management. If you don't do these five basics right, all the other fancy things that we do will be very, dismal in their effect, because these are just so foundational. Rebooting the system, helping your hormones to be balanced, your microbiome to be balanced, your blood flow to be optimized, your energy, and many, many other things that are just full system influence subcategories, if you will. But when it comes to finding more about where you can actually learn, I would say University of Arizona has an integrative medicine department. Definitely a great resource. You can certainly look into that. Institute of Health also has a complementary subcategory that you can go to NIH and actually search that. They are more conservative when it comes to a lot of these modalities, and they only take certain um, supplements or practices that are extremely well researched before they make suggestions. But again, we like that too. We want to make sure people are safe first and foremost.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you saying that. When you're talking about supplements, I know that when I first got into this, a lot of it was supplements. It was like, okay, I'm going to take all my omegas. I'm going to take all the lion's mane. I'm going to take ashwagandha. I'm going to take
Mm-hmm.
a, prenatal vitamin because that was one of the things that my doctor recommended that I take, even though I'm not pregnant. It was lots of different. By the time I bought one of those Monday through
You need
Friday
one of
pill
those.
distributors, and I
And
was like,
travel
how
one.
did I get here? All of a sudden I found that it was full. And I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, am I overdoing this? Should I be doing blood work in between all of these things? Like, if I'm taking extra vitamin B or extra vitamin D because I'm hearing that that's what everybody's short on, but then now I'm taking like 14 supplemental pills a day. Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Sort of, what's your take on
Right.
that?
Yeah. That's always really fascinating because I have patients who are on the extreme both ends of the spectrum, and they're like, nope, I want to get everything through my food and nothing else, and I want no supplements, no medicines, no nothing. And I'm like, I respect that, but our food, our air, our water, our soil from 100 years ago has significantly changed. And there's some great experts who are talking on this. There's a lot of research done on it. You can actually look at the nutritional quality of the food, and it's declined, some say, by 50% in the past decade or past century or so. The food is not the same, so you can't get the same nutrients that you used to get. Let alone all the chemicals that potentially, if you're exposed to, if they're not organic, or the water if it's not tested. And so we can talk about a lot of different resources that are available to keep you safe, and definitely a different subcategory. But and on the other spectrum, the people who want to supplement everything, and they're like, no, I want the new supplement out there. I want to try to get on this too. And so I think you can definitely have pill fatigue when it comes to it. People have, polypharmacy with medications. You can have poly supplements. I think there is no deficiency of supplements, if you will, for everybody. But there's definitely certain supplements that are often deficient. For example, magnesium is a very common one. Omega-3, vitamin D are certainly common ones. And so
So I'm okay to be taking those.
certainly good items to look into. And I would say that with caveat that you want to look at the brand. You want to make sure it's tested for its quality of where it's sourced. You want to make sure it's tested for having the amount and dose of what it says it has.
And how do you do that? Like, how do you cross-reference these things?
Yeah, so there are definitely resources. Good one would be consumerlabs.com. So it's a paid membership, but they're not, it's a great resource to actually take products off the shelf and test them. There's other websites that do this as well. And a lot of practitioners use certain dispensaries like Full Script that actually do their own testing, and they only work with high quality brands. So the brand does make a difference when people say, well, am I paying more here? Is it worth it? And I would say yes, as long as you've done your research and that's a good product. And granted, just once something is tested once doesn't mean that it will always be a good product. So it's good to test and come back. And consumerlabs.com does research on a regular basis and will give updates on different products. And so that's really nice. But also impurities is the other thing that you'll find. A lot of products come from out of the country, and some are amazing. Some of them have impurities of lead or of mercury or other
Slight impurity.
right. So and those things can cause certainly toxicity in our body. So I would say as long as your product is tested for having what it says it has, and also checked for impurities, that's a good start.
I love that you talked about the toxicity. How would you recommend somebody go through like detoxing from all of the things? Like if they're just starting to wake up to all of these ideas, like and really trying to take a proactive approach to being better about all the things, where do they really start?
Yeah, and that's a tough one because everybody's different and where they're at, and what resources we talked about being in Scottsdale and, having so much blessings and so many resources. And so not everybody is living in a very similar environment. So I think it just depends on where you're starting.
Not everybody can meet Yousef at a random neighborhood get together.
That's very kind. Maybe on a bike ride.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
But I would say it just depends on where you start. Sometimes such super basic things as just drinking more water so you can urinate more, so you can actually flush the systems would be enough good start. Sometimes just
How
like
much
having,
water?
that again, all depends. All depends on
I
your
always heard
function.
half your weight in ounces.
Some people use that, and that's a good, it's not a very general statement that can be made. And I think it has to do with your kidney function, your medical conditions, electrolytes involved. But that's definitely a good rough estimate for some people to use. It depends on your sweating, depends on all the, biohacking things that people are doing. So it's a good measure. Also, it's good to actually get a sense of, doing testing. So urine analysis, a lot of times that gives you a gravity. So we can look at that and see how well hydrated someone is. So make sure that, you look at that if you do a urine test. But I would say water, could be a simple basic thing like that, but then, fiber.
Honestly, and water's a great place to start where it doesn't cost anything extra, right?
Like I'm all for free things that we can already do.
Let's think of and I think that you were kind of just about to go into another one.
Yeah, it was just thing like fiber. And again, that thing's something that helps you, with your bowel movements. And so again, we're not getting into the specifics. There's so many things we can tap into, but there's so many basic things that, we can kind of look into, is my diet rich in fiber? Is it helping me, have regular, flow of the system, and God bless it. Sometimes we hear people say, I'm very regular. I'm like, are you? They're like, oh yeah, I go to the bathroom once a week. I was like, oh, okay. Okay. Not regular. So like, well, it's regular for me. So,
Wow.
So there are, everybody's regular is very different. So we always make a point to ask. I
remember when I did my first parasite cleanse and her first question was, I need you to talk to me about your poop. And how embarrassed are you about poop?
Right.
And she must have said the word poop 1,000 times in our conversation. I thought, well, I guess I'm going to get used to it real quick now. But I do think that it's important that we debunk some of the shame attached to our health and ways that we can ask questions like, what is regular? What is a healthy regular? That, again, these are ways that people can be managing and, just becoming more aware of their own bodies and what is normal and what's not normal, what needs improvement and what is like a great number,
Right. There is definitely a scale. So again, I know we're not going to talk about poop all the whole time, but I'll get this out that there's a Bristol score that goes over a couple of digits. And so you can look at that scale, and every patient that comes in our office gets to see the pictures, and they get a little poop picture, and they're like, "Oh, that's me." And so you get to see. You kind of want to be in that mid range, not too firm, not too loose, and how often do you go? And so it's definitely important to get these basics down. And when we have patients come to us, we look at all the systems, but then also we look at their past. We'll look at everything from their birth all the way to now. And so there's a timeline to things. And sometimes there's certain things, and this kind of ties into some of the stuff, we've talked before about. Sometimes there's certain things in our life that are not happening now, but maybe happened 10, 20 years ago, but they have energetic manifestation, or they have, influence our health, but they're in such an energetic level that they won't show up on any blood work for a very long time. And so it's very hard for a medical doctor to diagnose, or it's hard for us to actually see the results. But if you tap into learning about someone's trauma, learning about someone's past, exposure to antibiotics, learning about their history and the time of their health and their life, really gives you a better picture, and that requires time.
Yeah, I'm glad you say that, because actually my whole introduction into alternate forms of medicine really was largely because I learned about metaphysics. And it was after I was sick, and it was learning that breast cancer is the metaphysical representation of over nurturing or being under nurtured. And so really that became a reference point for me, trying to figure out, where can I nurture myself more? Where can I receive more nurturing? and where can I create boundaries that don't allow me to be so depleted?
Mm-hmm.
And really just learning that fact, right? Like just understanding that it was okay and safe to have boundaries, and that it was acceptable to and it was actually welcomed and like okay to get help,
Right.
you know? And so learning that really shifted my perspective on not just my own cancer, but others around me, and
Mm-hmm.
not even just cancer. Initially, I was diagnosing everything through metaphysics, you know, everything that I was experiencing. Oh, I've got a, you know, hurt right knee. Well, knee is the representation of the bridge between the physical and the spiritual world. And where am I feeling blocked between, you know, these different areas? Anyway, it made for my journaling to be a lot more interesting and fun during that chapter. But really, the more I learned how to pour into myself, taking into account what my emotional body and my physical body was experiencing, it actually did allow me to tap into other levels of consciousness around my well-being, which I think is really important. Is, you know, when you learn about Ayurvedic and you learn about people being able to see your tongue and
Mm-hmm.
knowing what your body needs, looking through your poop and knowing what your body needs. And then also understanding that there are certain supplements that you maybe can't get from food. These are the ones that you use supplements for. If there are certain foods that you can get certain things that are, you know, naturally, you know, depleted in our society, like the vitamin D, you know, knowing that there are certain you know, just best practices as we learn integrative health, I think is really powerful. And then everybody needs a Yousef.
No, it's kind of you. There's many, many better docs than me for sure. But I would say you
Only
want
the good docs talk like that.
I would say go to a doctor that is open to learn. I would say that's the one thing. If you would do yourself a favor, I would say make sure you seek people who are constantly learning and they're not, fearful to say I don't know, but I'll find out for you. And so I
Oh, I
think
love
that's very
that.
important because
Yeah.
anybody who thinks that they know it all, they've stopped learning.
Yeah.
And we're
Nobody
constantly
wants to be the
changing.
know-it-all that doesn't know it all.
Right? We don't know what we don't know. We don't know. So I think very well points well made. I would definitely say when it comes to the somatic aspect, that's one thing that's huge for me because it's often we don't have enough time in medicine. Now I'm blessed to work at a clinic, Lifescape, that we actually have 2 hours with our patients that come in the very first visit to just simply get to know who they are. And so during that process, you get
What
to
a
know,
gift.
yeah, so that's a blessing. And then another hour and a half when they come back, when we have labs to go over and do a full physical, but then go over and do updated labs and update their plan. So we have 3.5 hours just to kind of get someone set up and set up 20, 30 minutes with your typical setup with the conventional medicine, which, is not a whole lot of time. And I would say, to the, taking care of yourself comment, it's so huge. And, I would say, you have to take care of yourself. You have to put yourself first from a chronic perspective. Like if there's someone is in need, yes, you put them first if they're a loved one. But otherwise, always you should be first because you can't give from an empty cup. And I'm sure you've probably said this to many
Say that part
people,
again.
right? And
We
so,
can never hear it too many times.
right. So, but then your inner circle, your loved ones, and then your friends and so forth. And we ask if you're stressed, how do you cope? Where do you feel it in your body? And so these are things
Where
that
do you
people
feel it
don't.
in your body?
Yeah.
You guys, that has been a question or a statement that is so powerful. Even asking my 9-year-old daughter when I
Mm,
can tell that she's frustrated or feeling just out of whack, it's where do you feel it in your body? And if she's like, I've got a headache or I've got a stomach
mm-hmm.
ache, or you really can break
Absolutely.
down on a much more cellular level what is really happening.
Absolutely. And that helps us a lot of times know if someone's symptoms are somatic or there's something else going on that we need to, do a different kind of investigation or not. And most people are experts in their own health, in their own uh, their state of feeling, right? You know exactly the best, better than anybody else, how
How
you
you feel.
feel, and no doctor, no experts can tell you that. And so providers usually need to tap into that to kind of help their patients know that there are respected, they're heard, they're listened to as they're trying to help them, guide them through their journey of healing.
Yeah, I love that. And brings me to a great point that I know that for me, when I started going through treatment, I really struggled with memory and what I was taking and why I was taking it and how I felt that day, physically, emotionally, spiritually, all of those things. That keeping a journal was really, really helpful for me, because not only could it tell me the date and the time, but also after I ate certain things or after I talked to certain people, or just I started to become much more conscious also of my energy
Mm-hmm.
and how I felt after certain things. So there might be trends that I wouldn't have noticed
Mm-hmm.
that came out later because it was blaring at me on paper, but maybe not something that I would have remembered a week later.
And it's really therapeutic. That's the other thing I would say. When we talk about how can you tap into therapeutic, powerful means, a lot of people don't have anybody, and they're like they're not with friends, they're not with family. Um, you can simply journal.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that expressively gets the emotions out. You can play music, you can draw, you can literally say things out. You know, and I've done many of these things, and they've done research on these things. And expressing how you feel simply by itself can reduce the amount of cortisol and stress. Just kind of stating it out. In traditional Chinese medicine, they say the qi is flowing, the energy is flowing, and so you've got stagnation, of the energy that causes disease. Obviously, that's not the Western medicine's philosophy of disease, but that's the Eastern version. And for example, in Asian traditional Chinese medicine, they say a lot of times if you have a sinus infection on a recurrent basis, there's probably a sense of unprocessed anger that's not resolved. And obviously, not everybody who's getting a sinus infection is an angry person, but if a recurrent episode's happening, that might be one area to look into potentially. From
Yeah.
one practice of medicine, different part of the world, that would be respectful to explore. So energy flow, I think, really makes a difference, and really expressing how you feel can be very therapeutic. So, and you see that in blue zones of the world.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that they have is community. They're not eating alone. And I always ask everybody, it's like, how many meals per day or per week do you have with another person? And so, a lot of times,
How many days a week or a month do you have a meal with somebody?
so per day or in a week, yeah.
And how much should we?
I mean, I think depends on
No
how
right
often.
answer.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
think
yeah.
there's a right answer. I mean, when I think about answering that question, I'm like, well, how social are you,
Yeah.
right? And so
Sure.
some are extroverted, some are introverted. But I think we are social beings, and we live longer when we're around other people. And so, and sharing something beautiful as a meal is nourishing for your body, with the presence of someone you also enjoy, has been shown, to again reduce cortisol and stress. And so it just simple means to kind of live longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've kind of brought it full circle because we're kind of back to that communal aspect of curated experiences.
Mm.
Where can anyone watching us right now, where can they find you? Where can they come see you in your practice? And how do they get involved in your events?
Thank you. Thank you for that. We definitely, my practice is up in North Scottsdale at Lifescape. And so we have a website, and you can certainly find me there. And I'm more than happy to meet anybody who is interested. And we do meet and greets, and there's definitely a lot of information we can share with you. I am on Instagram, Yousef Mohammed EMD, and our social wellness group is Authentic Curated Experiences on Instagram as well. So we're going to be doing an herbal happy hour very soon this week, so I'm very excited about that.
I'm excited about it too.
Yeah, so it's going to be a very unique one. We've never done something like this, and it's going to be very, very fun.
Well, they're all unique. And just thank you for everything that you're doing, not only in the practice of medicine, but also in our community. It is always amazing seeing your smiling, happy
Thank you.
face. And the way that you just give back to everyone in our community is mind blowing. So thank
Thank
you
you.
for being here and supporting our mission here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.